And I was actually raised in Hamilton for a few years I don't remember. I was very young, and then I moved to a small town at like 7 years old. And so, it's kind of hard to fit in a really small town. Like, it's a town of like 4,000 people going from like Hamilton to there, and I was just really young, so.
And you're an outsider no matter what happens anyway.
For sure,
right?
like everyone's related to everybody.
Yeah.
Like I always used to wish I grew up in the town so that I could get a job from my cousin or something, because everyone was all getting hooked up all the time. Anyways, but yeah, like definitely had some adversities as far as like having a mental illness in my family and being exposed to that at a young age. And then I think another aspect of that was when I was young, like my mom filled me in, probably I would say when I was too young, as to what her traumas were. So that kind of like, to me, added a level of like deep compassion, because like I really love this woman so much, and I now know everything she's been through. And so her pain and the shit that flows down from her extremely challenging life since she was a kid, like it made me understand why she was hurting me or hurting us, you know what I mean? And it wasn't constant, but it was like, it could get really intense. There was a lot of abuse. There was a lot of like not being able to go to sleep if you wanted to. And actually I have a song on my new record called Rattling Up My Cage that's kind of like about that. And what it's about is that like, yeah, I'm going through all this pain, but like I know that you've gone through worse pain.
Right.
And I'm so much better off. I know that I didn't have to deal with what she's dealt with, or like, like sexual abuse and stuff like that. Like, oh, thank God that I'm so blessed that I haven't had to deal with that,
Right.
And that's just a robbing of a life. And so it's close to me. A lot of my family's gone through that, and I feel like a lot of people over a certain age, and even still today, you know what I mean? But
even more than that, it forced you into, just from the conversation we had yesterday, it forced you into a role where you were the parent.
Yeah.
In a lot of circumstances, and that's that puts a requirement on a kid that a kid doesn't know how to deal with, right?
For sure, but I also felt like a very wise young person in a lot of ways. Like I at least felt that way, and maybe that was because my reflection back was parents that were listening to me as if I had knowledge that they were seeking.
Right.
Because
that was the fascinating part of the stuff that we talked about yesterday, is that you would describe conversations with your parents where like your parents would be like, okay, tell us what to do.
Yeah, and they wouldn't say that, but it'd come to a point where they just had nothing.
Yeah.
And I was just like in there being like, I can solve this, like, and they would say to me, they'd both just be like, at the end of it, like, you should be a mediator and stuff. Like, and I was like, yeah, I'm naturally born into the job, but there's a lot of kids who would have just had a lot harder time with a lot of that stuff. And you know what? Everything kind of co-creates together in its way. We fit into these roles the way we do. If I step out as mediator, all of a sudden they have to deal with their problems themselves. All of a sudden, maybe everything changes for the better, but we end up relying on each other and co-creating this dysfunction, And I always laugh because we were in this nice area of town. Like, it was a nice, well-off, Regent Street. It was pretty good.
Yeah.
And I would always think like we'd be up and there'd be yelling out the windows and just psychotic stuff, psychotic episodes. And I would just think to my head, like, man, people are like, oh, these Karens, they live down, Regent Street. And like, just to think, from the outside of these houses, what's really going on.
And it exploded that much that like if I was living across the street every once in a while, I would see what was going on. Kind of thing?
People in town for sure know my family.
Oh yeah.
Like, oh yeah. Whether it was, well, then once I hit high school, we like would have young people over and be party time. It wasn't like always just a big party house. It was such a good. That was the thing, is like bipolar disorders. Very polarizing, and when you have someone who's so good, I was so lucky, and that's I think why I am who I am today, is that it's almost like adversity strengthens you, so when it comes to like people that are like intense or it's hard or they have pain and stuff, like I have a lot to give to that. I can handle that stuff, but I also got a lot of love. I was so loved. Like, me and my mom were like soulmates. So when things were good, it was like one of the most beautiful relationships people can have with a relative, like a parent.
Right.
And so it was just so special that I feel like it allowed me to survive that stuff and come out okay on the other side. Not to say I didn't have a lot of hardship after, you know, it definitely expressed itself in bad ways before now, you know.
Right.
But I kind of have this analogy where, like, when things are good, you just enjoy them while you can, because you're not going to spend the time focused on what bad happened when you just get those fucking good moments and you're like, and I feel like it's like you go up, you're like drowning, the storm's happening, and you're like just being thrown around, and then it settles and the water goes still, and you just go up and you stick your lips up and you just sip as much air as you can, which is like sipping air, you know? And it's just to hold it in and keep you afloat for the next little bit.
Right.
Because it was kind of like that. It was like you never knew what you were kind of going into. It was chaotic.
Yeah.
It wasn't stable.
Don't forget, you can subscribe to our full audio episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere you find your audio podcasts. The full episodes, highlights, and our live off-the-floor performance videos can be found at our YouTube channel, and you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at the AVB Podcast. Of course, you'll find links to our incredible sponsors and this week's guest in the description below. The AVB Podcast is part of the Border City Network. Find more great content at bordercitynetwork.com. See you next time, folks. Bye-bye.